Welcome back. Hi, I'm Chris from Rose City Originals, and I'm here with AccuQuilt in the Dream Studio to help you make your first quilt. In this series, I'll walk you through step-by-step making your first quilt with your AccuQuilt cutter. If this is your first time joining us, go ahead and watch our previous 3 episodes and then join us back here. Today we are assembling our quilt sandwich and talking about backing, batting, and quilting options. As always, be sure to like and bookmark this video so you can refer back to it later. As a reminder, the pattern we'll be using is called Go Fundamentals and is available to download for free from the AccuQuilt website. There will be a link in the description box so you can get yourself a copy. Before we begin today, let's gather up the tools we'll be using. Today is going to be pretty basic by way of tools. There are a few basting methods we'll cover, so we're going to need some June Taylor basting spray, some Clover Wonder pins, and a hand sewing needle with some lightweight thread. Today I'm going to show you 3 basic basting methods. We'll cover the most common, which is pin basting, a less common, thread basting, which is great if you're going to be hand quilting, and then the quickest method, spray basting. Regardless of the basting method, a quilt sandwich is, generally speaking, always constructed in the same manner. So we'll start out with our quilt backing fabric. The quilt we're making is fairly small, so it will fit within a 1-yard cut of standard quilting cotton. But what do you do if your quilt is larger? For large quilts, you can purchase wide back fabric, which is usually around 108 inches wide, or you can piece together your standard width of quilting cotton. When joining your back, a lot of folks prefer to remove the selvage as it's a tighter weave and can bunch up on the back of your quilt. It's also common to sew your backing together with a 1/2 inch seam allowance, and this just gives more support for an area of the quilt that will see a lot of wear. So we'll lay our backing fabric down with the right side, or the pretty side, facing down. On top of that goes our batting. This is also known as a wadding in some parts of the world. When it comes to which batting to use, there are many options and it can be a little overwhelming. There are several factors you can consider when making your selection. Is this going to be more of a summer quilt or a winter quilt? Who is the recipient and do they have any allergies? If you want it to look puffy or more of a flat look in your quilting. So let's talk about batting. Generally speaking, there are 3 types of fibers that can make up your batting. There are natural fibers such as cotton, wool, bamboo, or silk. Natural fibers have a tendency to shrink in the wash, giving you a nice quilt crinkle. Then there are synthetic fibers like polyester or even recycled polyester, and these battings don't shrink when washed, so you have less of that crinkle effect. And then there are blends of both natural and synthetic fibers. By and large, the most common quilting batten you'll find is an 80-20 blend of cotton and polyester, and this is good for the majority of quilts. The natural fibers are breathable, which makes a quilt more versatile in warm and cold conditions, while the polyester helps hold its shape and retain body heat. Wool batting is great for winter quilts and often gives more of a puffy look, but can pose issues if the recipient is allergic to wool. Care instructions for wool batting can also vary, and some are recommended as hand wash only, so be sure to check the packaging. Silk batting can give a wonderful draping effect, which is great for show quilts, but can be a little pricey. And now there's bamboo batting, which is relatively new to the market, but it is marketed as a more durable batting than wool or cotton and required less pesticides than cotton crops. Polyester batting is also fairly common and economical. It provides great warmth, so it's great for winter quilts or colder climates. And as a synthetic fiber, it doesn't have a memory, so it's great for show quilts as it won't retain the fold lines caused by shipping or transporting. Okay, now that we've had a rundown on fibers, let's talk about loft. When you see loft on a batting, it's referring to how thick the batting is. A loftier batting will provide more puff to your quilt. Most natural battings are a low loft, so it's 1/8 of an inch or less, with the exception of wool, which can come in varying lofts. Polyester batting has the most variety of loftiness, from a very low loft to a very high loft of almost 1/2 an inch. One last thing to talk about with batting is scrim, and what the heck is that? When you see that a batting has scrim, that means there is a very thin membrane or interfacing that has been fused to the batting. This gives extra stability and is great for projects where the quilting is much further apart. Speaking of quilting, your batting should come with instructions and the recommended distance your quilting lines should be. This is to help your quilt last longer without the batting bunching up or making your quilt lumpy. Generally speaking, if your lines are about 3 to 4 inches apart, you will be fine for most modern commercial battings. Okay, back to the project. We're going to lay our batting on top of the backing fabric and give it a gentle smooth out. And now we can add our quilt top. And now we can start basting. We're going to start with pin basting since it is the most common. So here I have some Clover Wonder pins. These are great for pin basting quilts. And we are going to start from the center and work our way out. So with these pins, you just push it through all 3 layers of the fabric, poke it back up to the top, and then close it. You'll want to pin about a hand's width apart. The more pins you use, the flatter everything will stay, but then the more pins you have to remove as you're quilting. Thread basting is similar to pin basting, but you're using a sewing needle and thread to hold the layers together. So we're just going to take a needle with some thread, go down through all 3 layers, and then poke back up. And we'll leave ourselves a generous tail. Then we're going to take a really big stitch, about 2 or 3 inches, and then make another small stitch through all 3 layers. And then we will just continue along through the entire quilt. I just have a small sample here to show you. So on the back, you can kind of see the little stitches we took, and on the front, you can see the large stitches. This is great if you're going to be hand quilting your project. As you have it in either your hoop or just your hand, there's no pins to poke you and nothing to be in the way of hooping your area. And then when you are done quilting, you can just snip the threads and pull them out. And now for our last method, spray basting. For this, we'll need a can of June Taylor basting spray, and it's best to do this outside as there can be some overspray and you don't want to breathe in the fumes. But we're in a well-ventilated studio, so I'll be fine. So we'll peel back our quilt top and just lightly spray on the batting. You don't need to spray a lot, it just needs to be tacky to hold the fabric in place while we quilt it. Now you can smooth the top back down and make sure it's stuck. And we'll peel up the other half of the quilt top and repeat. And then we're going to flip everything over and repeat that for the backing. You do want to spray on the batting and not the actual fabric to avoid any accidental staining. So now that everything's basted, we're ready to start quilting. So there are many quilting options. Some options would be free motion quilting where you kind of draw out a design with your needle, or stitch in the ditch where you basically just top stitch along all of your seams. But we're going to start with the basic. We'll be stitching some straight lines on the 45-degree angle. So join me next time and we'll quilt this together and I'll give you my tips and tricks for straight line quilting. So until then, work on making your quilt sandwich and getting it basted. Take your time on this step and make sure everything is nice and flat. This will save you hours of headache later. Trust me. Be sure to hit that follow button for more videos, including tips and tricks for getting the most out of your AccuQuilt cutter. Thanks for watching. See you next time.